Okay, 24. Computers perform actions that are closer to thinking than anything non-human animals do. So computers do things that are closer to thinking. So if it's a computer, then it does something like thinking, than anything non-human animals do. So if it's an animal, then it doesn't do something close to thinking, right? So I'm going to write not think and think, but what that really stands for is closer to thinking versus not close to thinking, right? But computers do not have volitional powers. So if it's a computer, it doesn't have volitional powers. Although some non-human animals do. So non-human animals. So some animals, right, some of them do have volition. So some, not all, but some. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? Having volitional powers need not involve thinking. So, I think that one does follow, right? Because some animals have volitional powers, but they don't think. We know all animals don't think, or don't do anything close to thinking. Yeah, that one does follow, right? So I like that one. So I'm going to circle that one and keep that one in mind and check out the rest of them. Just to go over that again and why that follows. They're saying, hey, just because you have volitional powers, that doesn't mean that you need to be able to think, right? It doesn't necessarily involve thinking. So we know that animals, they don't think, but some of them do have volitional powers, right? And so A could follow from that, right? If they all don't think, but then some of them have volitional powers, volitional powers doesn't necessarily involve thinking, right? Let's check out B. Things that are not animals. So things that are not animals do not have volitional powers. Well, we know that's definitely false, right? Because computers, I'm assuming, aren't animals. I mean, I guess they didn't tell us that, so I'm making that assumption on my own. But computers have volitional powers, right? We don't really know anything about non-animals. Yeah, I guess if it's able to think, right, do something close to thinking, then it's not an animal. But that's all we know, right, about not animals. So we can cross out B. We don't know anything about not animals and volitional powers. Other than if the computer thing counts, then B is definitely wrong because it's directly contradicted. C, computers possess none of the attributes of living things. That's, I mean, contradicted pretty much, right? I mean, we would have to assume that humans think to contradict that because they're saying, hey, computers think. If we think, if you're a human, then you think. That's definitely contradicted. But even if we don't make that assumption, we can cross that out because computers, they never tell us that they possess none of the attributes of living things, right? That none is a pretty strong word, and they never mention anything like that. D, it is necessary to have volitional powers in order to think. It is necessary to have volitional powers in order to think. Not necessarily, right? We know that computers think and that computers have volitional powers. Do we know that it's necessary to have volitional powers in order to think? No. That would mean that, hey, if you think, then you have volitional powers, right? If volition is necessary, that's what that statement would look like. But this statement, right, isn't anywhere else, right? Like we don't get this statement from the information that they've given to us in the stimulus. So D is not right. D is not strongly supported by the stimulus. E, computers will never be able to think as human beings do. Okay, we'll never be able to. That's talking about like the future. We know nothing about the future, nothing about the past. This is just telling us some information, right? The stimulus. So E is definitely wrong because E is saying stuff about the future and what computers will never be able to do. So not only is that very strong, it's talking about the future and we don't know anything about the future, right? So we can cross out E for sure. The answer here would be A.